At 9 seconds, everything stopped. The police training instructor's arms hung at his sides. Bruce Lee stood in the same position. And 40 police recruits forgot how to breathe. Los Angeles Police Academy. March 1968. Training Facility Gymnasium B. 2:22 p.m. The mat was standard issue, blue, worn from hundreds of training sessions, slightly faded under the high windows where afternoon light cut through the dust. 40 police recruits stood in formation around its edges, sweat still cooling on their necks from the previous drill. They'd been training for 6 hours. Push-ups, sprints, defensive tactics. The usual Tuesday grind. Their instructor, Sergeant Frank Morrison, 6 feet 2 inches, 220 pounds of muscle earned through 2 tours in Korea and 15 years on the LAPD, stood at the center of the mat, hands on his hips, looking at the small man who just walked into his gymnasium. Bruce Lee. 5 feet 7 inches. 135 pounds. Wearing simple black training pants and a sleeveless black shirt that showed arms carved from something that didn't look entirely human. This is him? Morrison asked the academy director standing near the door. This is Mr. Lee. Director Walsh confirmed. He's here at the request of Chief Davis. Demonstration on modern hand-to-hand combat techniques. Morrison's jaw tightened. He'd heard the stories. Some Hollywood kung fu guy who'd been training a few officers privately. Claimed he could take down any man regardless of size. Morrison didn't believe in magic. He believed in weight, reach, and the kind of training that came from real combat, not movie sets. All right, Morrison said, his voice carrying that particular tone of authority that comes from years of being obeyed without question. Mr. Lee, I appreciate you coming down. But my recruits train in practical combat. Real-world scenarios. Not demonstration techniques. Bruce stepped onto the mat. His feet made no sound. He didn't respond to Morrison's tone. He simply stood there, relaxed but present, like water waiting to take the shape of whatever container held it. I'd like to see what you're teaching, Bruce said quietly. His accent carried traces of Hong Kong and Seattle and something else, the kind of precision that comes from choosing every word deliberately. Morrison smiled. Not friendly. What I'm teaching is how to survive when a suspect outweighs you by 50 pounds and doesn't care about rules. Demonstration techniques don't work when someone's actually trying to hurt you. Then don't demonstrate, Bruce said. Test. The gymnasium went very quiet. Morrison looked at Director Walsh, who gave a small, uncomfortable nod. Morrison turned back to Bruce. You want me to test you? I want you to try to hurt me, Bruce said, his voice still calm, still quiet. Like a real suspect would. No holding back. No movie choreography. Just you trying to take me down however you know how. Morrison's smile widened. Mr. Lee, I outweigh you by 85 pounds. I know. I've been training men to fight for 15 years. I know. And you want me to actually try to hurt you? Yes. Bruce didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Morrison looked at his recruits. 40 young men watching with barely contained excitement. This was going to be a lesson. Not the lesson this Hollywood guy thought he was teaching, but a lesson nonetheless. Size matters. Training matters. Real combat isn't a movie. All right, Morrison said, rolling his shoulders. Director Walsh, you're witnessing this. Mr. Lee requested full contact. No rules. First one to submit or get taken down loses. Walsh nodded nervously. Perhaps we should. It's fine, Bruce said, his eyes never leaving Morrison. 9 seconds. Morrison frowned. What? 9 seconds. That's how long it will take. The recruits exchanged glances. Someone in the back row suppressed a laugh. Morrison's face hardened. 9 seconds. Morrison repeated. You think you can take me down in 9 seconds? No, Bruce said, and for the first time, something like a smile touched his lips. I know I can. The question is whether you'll understand what happened. Morrison's hands came up into a fighting stance. Years of training evident in every line of his posture. Balanced, grounded, ready to use his weight and reach advantage. He'd taken down men bigger than Bruce Lee hundreds of times. Bruce didn't raise his hands. He stood completely still, arms relaxed at his sides, weight distributed evenly on both feet. Watching. You might want to. Morrison began. Bruce moved. Not fast. Not slow. Precisely. Like a key turning in a lock that had been waiting for exactly that shape. Second one. Morrison threw a jab. Textbook, powerful, the kind of punch that had broken noses in actual street fights. Bruce wasn't there. He'd shifted his center maybe 3 inches to the left. Morrison's fist passed through empty air. Second two. Morrison followed with his right, throwing his full weight behind it, trying to use his size advantage. Bruce stepped in, not away. Suddenly he was inside Morrison's reach, where the bigger man's punches lost their leverage. Second three. Bruce's left hand touched Morrison's leading arm. Not a strike. A touch. Light as a question. But Morrison felt his entire structure shift, his balance redirecting in a direction he hadn't intended. Second four. Morrison tried to grab, to use his wrestling training, to wrap Bruce up and use his 85-pound advantage. Bruce's right hand came up, not to block, but to guide. Morrison's grab found only air, his momentum carrying him forward into empty space that had been occupied by Bruce Lee's center a fraction of a second earlier. Second five. Morrison was off balance now. Not falling, but not stable. Bruce's foot tapped behind Morrison's ankle. Not a kick. A placement. Creating a reference point. Second six. Bruce's hands were on Morrison's arm and shoulder now. Still not striking. Just touching. Redirecting. Using Morrison's own forward pressure against him. The recruits leaning in, trying to understand what they were seeing. Second seven. Morrison felt his feet leave the ground. Not from being lifted. Bruce wasn't strong enough to lift 220 pounds. But from being rotated, his own momentum and structure used against him, his weight becoming a liability instead of an advantage. Second eight. Morrison was horizontal. Parallel to the ground. His training screamed at him to break his fall, to use his grappling experience, to do something. But there was nothing to do. He was in midair, completely controlled, not from force but from precision. Second nine. The mat met Morrison's back. Not hard, Bruce had controlled the descent, preventing injury. But unmistakably, undeniably, completely. Morrison lay there, Bruce's hand still resting lightly on his shoulder, Bruce's knee positioned just above Morrison's solar plexus without touching it, Bruce's other hand near Morrison's throat in a position that could have struck but didn't. Bruce Lee stood up. Stepped back. Offered his hand. The gymnasium was silent. 40 police recruits stood frozen, some with mouths open, some with hands halfway to their faces, all of them trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Morrison took Bruce's hand and stood. His face was red, from exertion, from embarrassment, from something else. He looked at the clock on the wall. 9 seconds. Exactly 9 seconds. What? Morrison's voice was hoarse. What did you just do? I moved when you moved, Bruce said simply. I used your force, not mine. Your size made you powerful, but it also made you committed. When you committed to a direction, I was already where you weren't going to be. Morrison shook his head, still trying to understand. But I've trained for. You've trained to fight people who fight the way you fight, Bruce said, not unkindly. Big. Strong. Direct. You're very good at that. But you haven't trained against someone who doesn't fight your fight. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most important part of this story is still unfolding. Director Walsh stepped forward. Mr. Lee, that was... I've never seen anything like that. Bruce turned to the recruits. 40 young men still frozen in their formation, still processing. "Can I show them?" he asked Morrison. Morrison, to his credit, nodded. "Yeah. Show them." For the next hour, Bruce Lee taught. Not by lecturing. Not by demonstrating forms. By breaking down exactly what had happened in those 9 seconds. "Second one," Bruce said, recreating the moment with Morrison. "His jab comes. I don't block. I'm not where the punch goes. It's not about being faster. It's about not being in the line of force." He demonstrated with recruit after recruit. Men who outweighed him by 30, 40, 50 pounds. Each time, the same principle: redirect, don't resist. Use their commitment against them. Be water, not stone. Second 4. Bruce continued, walking through the sequence. He grabs. But I've already felt where his weight is going. His hands close on air because I'm moving with his intention, not against it. Morrison watched from the side of the mat. His ego was bruised, but something else was happening. He was learning. Actually learning. For the first time in years, someone was showing him a completely different way to think about combat. Second 8. Bruce said, demonstrating the rotation that had taken Morrison off his feet. I'm not lifting him. I'm rotating his structure. His own muscles are working against each other because his weight is distributed in a way his body can't support. A recruit raised his hand. "Mr. Lee, how do we learn this?" Bruce smiled. "You already know how to do this. You do it every time you open a door, turn a steering wheel, redirect force. You just don't think of it as combat. Combat isn't about being the strongest. It's about being the most precise." Away from the cameras, Bruce made a choice no one expected. When the session ended, Bruce approached Morrison privately. The recruits were filing out, buzzing with excitement, already trying to recreate what they'd seen. Director Walsh was in his office making phone calls. This was going to become a regular training program, he'd already decided. Bruce and Morrison stood alone on the mat. "I didn't come here to embarrass you," Bruce said quietly. Morrison looked at him. Really looked at him. "I know. But you did. I came to show a principle. You were strong enough to let me use you as the example. That takes more strength than winning." Morrison laughed bitterly. "Didn't feel like strength. Felt like getting destroyed in front of 40 kids. Those 40 kids just learned that size isn't everything. That precision matters. That someone can be outweighed by 80 pounds and still be effective." Bruce paused. "They learned that from you. Because you were secure enough to test yourself against something unfamiliar." Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Teach me." "What?" "Teach me. What you just did. I've been training men for 15 years and I've never seen anything like that. Teach me so I can teach them properly." Bruce studied Morrison's face. Saw genuine humility there. Genuine desire to learn. "Okay," Bruce said. "But not as instructor to student. As one practitioner to another. You have knowledge I don't have, real combat experience, military training, years of teaching. I have knowledge you don't have. We exchange." Morrison extended his hand. They shook. This time as equals. But what followed would stay with everyone who witnessed it, forever. For the next 6 months, Bruce Lee came to the Los Angeles Police Academy every Tuesday. He trained with Morrison. He trained with the recruits. He broke down the principles of interception, redirection, minimal force with maximum efficiency. Morrison, in turn, taught Bruce about the psychology of street encounters, about how suspects actually fought when high on adrenaline or drugs, about the legal and ethical constraints of law enforcement combat. The recruits who witnessed that first 9-second encounter became some of the most effective officers in LAPD history. They carried a lesson that transcended technique. Real strength is precision, not force. Morrison kept a stopwatch in his office for the rest of his career. 9 seconds. He'd show it to new instructors and tell them the story. Not as a tale of defeat, but of the day he stopped teaching and started learning. When Bruce Lee died in 1973, Morrison attended the funeral. He brought 40 former recruits with him, the witnesses. They stood in formation, silent, honoring the man who taught them that ego is the enemy and precision is the path. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. The training mat where it happened was retired in 1985. Morrison requested it be preserved. Today it sits in the LAPD museum with a small plaque. 9 seconds March 1968, the day we learned. Bruce never asked for credit. He just moved when others committed. He touched when others struck. He taught when others would have gloated. 9 seconds to change everything.